This is not about taking away anyone's guns. It's not about vilifying gun owners. In fact, we believe we should be treating responsible gun owners as an example of how every gun owner should behave. I respect the culture and the tradition and the concerns of lawful gun owners. At the same time, the Second Amendment, like all other rights, is not absolute.
Okay, he also called for these measures, banning assault weapons, and if we can, he says, we should raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21, ban high-capacity magazines, strengthen background checks, enact safe storage laws and red flag laws, repeal gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. Joining us to talk about this, New York Congressman Peter King and Democratic strategist Bill Caruso. Now Peter, anybody that's followed politics knows that a lot of these things are dead on arrival. But is there anywhere we're getting emotional reactions to what we're seeing with these mass shootings, especially in school? There's something about that obviously gets people riled up. The solutions seem to be different depending on what side of the aisle. But from your experience, Peter, is there anything in the middle that actually could advance?
Maybe now, even I tell you, I remember after Sandy Hook, I thought there was a possibility when Joe Manchin and Pat Toomey come up with a compromise, and that didn't go anywhere. I think it's possible. Now, again, I was a Republican who, along with Henry Hyde and others, voted for the assault weapon ban in 1994. I don't see that being reinstated now, but I think there could be some limitations put on the purchase of AR-15s and large capacity magazines. On the other hand, I think Democrats should be putting more money into hardening of the schools, consider whether or not certain teachers should be armed, like those who have police experience, and also to realize that there are more kids killed, innocent kids killed on the streets of Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and Chicago than are killed by AR-15s. So to me, this should be addressed totally from both sides, with both sides making concessions, but I don't see it right now. Except maybe there can be something on the assault weapons as far as raising the age, and there can be should be, I think, funding put in to harden the schools. But it's people get dug in, especially during election years.
Yeah, Bill, your thoughts?
Some of the best regulation that I've seen over time, we saw in the career schools, and I know former congressman was involved in some of that. My former boss was. It's the industry coming and saying, hey, we've had enough. We want to police the bad actors. And we just haven't seen that come out of this industry, or even to some extent some of the responsible gun owners. So I'm hopeful. I actually am hopeful the bipartisan congressional conversations are going on, hopefully unfettered, because I do think there's an opportunity to deal with background checks, deal with red flag laws. Let's get done what's possible, and let's stop trying to push the impossible. Yeah, I'd love to see an assault weapon ban. I think it makes good, smart policy, but I don't think that's politically possible right now. Raising the age limit, creating a little longer time period. We've seen 2 separate shootings now where that would have actually mattered. Those are real fixes. Some of this other stuff doesn't mean anything. I don't think teachers having guns is a smart play. Just like I don't think me having to call my child's play date parents and find out whether they have guns in the home, and that's apparently the tool for us right now, smart either. One town that I live in, New Jersey, we just saw that a town is going to be hiring retired cops to be posted in every school, and they will be carrying weapons. Yeah. Phenomenal opportunity, right? That costs some money. And Peter's right. We need to have the federal government put their money where their mouth is and fund some of this stuff so that we can protect schools. But I think giving teachers the responsibility now to also be protectors is just stupid policy.
Okay, I want to get Peter's take on this. Over 67% of Republicans and over 48% of Democrats believe that preventing properly trained teachers and staff from carrying a firearm makes schools more dangerous. First of all, I don't like how that's worded, by the way. That's a very confusing question, to be very honest. So I personally am not even sure those results are accurate because they could be the question could be misunderstood. So let me just make it easier, Peter. Should teachers or some teachers be trained and carry firearms within a school?
Not necessarily just trained. I would accept it if it was a former law enforcement professional who was now teaching, someone who had real life experience. It's one thing to be trained in the use of weapons, but unless you've been actually out on the battlefield, actually in the streets, it's hard to trust somebody using the weapon. It's almost like in baseball. You can be great in the batting cage, but until you get up in the World Series, it doesn't matter. So I would say if you have a teacher who is a former police officer, law enforcement officer, who has on the ground experience, yes, I think in that case, if someone does come into the room with a assault weapon or whatever weapon, and the teacher has a gun and is trained in it and has law enforcement experience, it would be a plus. But again, that would be a very limited number of teachers.
Yeah, and I agree with that. My wife's a teacher, and as she said, you know, nobody becomes a teacher to become a firearms expert. But having said that, I know teachers who who have carry license, and they are very knowledgeable and responsible. And if they were in a situation, although, you know, they get so much pushback for not even teaching properly, you know, why then they would be given the responsibility and trust to use guns, I'm not sure, Bill, but no, we're not going to. But go ahead, Bill.
I would just say this to you. If we're going to talk about what should be going on in schools, in addition to hardening schools in an appropriate way, I think what we should be doing is modeling what we do with fire safety and DARE. My kids are trained at a very early age of what to do in case of fire. If they see fire, if they smell smoke, you know, stop, drop, and roll. I mean, it's ingrained in these children. And we do not teach anything about guns in the school. We don't teach about what to do if you hear one of your friends talking about harming themselves. We don't teach that in school. We don't deal with this in school. We don't educate kids about what to do here. And that's something I think you can find bipartisan support for. But we don't fund it and we don't do it.
Yeah. You're right. I have a brother-in-law that is an instructor at a gun shop, and I take my girls there. He's in Texas, and he trains them. They understand, and they're responsible. And by the way, the overwhelming majority of gun owners are responsible. So I never want to lose that perspective either. Peter King, Bill Caruso, thank you.
You guys, thank you.